They're all already waiting at the gates.
Busting the doors down. They're busting the doors down. Welcome all. Keep loading it in while you're sitting there waiting. Share this live feed to your page or profile. Welcome to the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. We are the only live, local, liberty-minded program right here in Kootenai County. What we do, we don't just focus on elections. We went through an election and found out there was a lot of corruption and shenanigans to expose. That's what we do. We expose political power players, politicians, and those political social influencers. There's a lot of them. That web grows deeper every single day. We're your hosts, Dan and Dawna Wilson. I'm here to screen your questions and comments. Here's how this is going to work. We walk through the program tonight. You're going to put those questions and comments right there into the comment section on whichever platform you're watching. Like I said a little bit ago, if you're watching live, be sure to share this feed to your page or profile. If you're watching the replay, you can still share it. For those of you listening back on our podcast, be sure to catch us live every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. And a reminder, opinions expressed here are ours only, not necessarily that of any of our advertisers, sponsors, or affiliates. On tonight's episode, we're going to reveal an explosive audio recording. And that, you guys, exposes how Pastor Paul Van Noy and former DHS Agent Davalu Cummings use their church positions to manipulate political narratives and control conversations in Kootenai County. What presents itself as a discussion of faith that quickly unravels into a coordinated effort to push lies, shape opinions, and influence votes, all under the cover of spiritual guidance. In the recording, Van Noy admits to receiving weekly briefings from a select group, including Davalu Cummings, to craft talking points on local, state, and national issues. In this meeting, both Van Noy and Cummings repeatedly shut down questions, twist facts, and pressure a concerned churchgoer into accepting their political agenda. What they call insight looks far more like deliberate narrative control, a religious facade masking a political operation. We're going to play the audio clip by clip tonight, dissect their tactics, and expose how this network operates to steer elections from the pulpit and silence dissenting voices. So that's all tonight. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's your host, Dan Wilson.
Hey, how you doing? How are you doing?
I'm doing all right. I haven't sat down today.
I know you've been working very hard, very diligently. Welcome to you out there watching wherever you may be. If you want truth, if you want the pursuit of justice, if you love liberty, then you won't want to miss this episode tonight, Liberty Without Compromise, where we talk about all things related to life, liberty, and property. But the greatest part of both those is your liberty to go and do those things that make you who you are right here in this great nation. Now, I believe that there is both wailing and gnashing of teeth and celebration after yesterday's election. Some I was somewhat shocked by. Some I was not. It looks like that Brent Reagan, the KCRC, Dave Riley, and his ilk are at war with Paul Van Noy and Candlelight, Stephanie Fetzer. It's interesting to see that play out.
Yeah, the outcome of that election, I think what it showed is there were wins and losses on both sides. This really is an opportunity for you and I, who have been calling this, saying it like it is for the last year and a half, that you got people in these positions for Republican Party or in religious organizations that are not true conservatives. And they tried to finger point when they had opposition like you running for office. It was easy for them to stick together in the cause of taking you out. We're way past that now. And we're still here to expose that corruption. Well, now we get to sit back and watch as they duke it out between each other, because you got Brent Reagan, who's claiming victory
Well, I'm reminded
or that it's a success
of the proverb, he who walks with integrity walks securely, but he who makes his paths crooked will be found out. And these people, all of them, have behaved very poorly the past year. They claim the cause of Christ. They claim that they are conservative, but their actions state otherwise. So one thing that we are following is something that was relayed to me today about Sheriff Norris and a decision that he arbitrarily made yesterday. Not ready to go out with that, but it's a little teaser for you to be staying tuned for the next episode. By then, we should be able to vet some of that out, but it just is, again, a example of how Bob Norris walks around pretending that he is the king and the rule maker. And I think that when you hear what transpired, even you will be outraged. So you won't want to miss that next week. Now, this week, we have a very long segment. We're going to talk about that a little more here shortly, but it's a continuation of our episode that we did last week on Paul Van Noy, pastor of Candlelight Fellowship. And we're going to go back into the history of why we are doing this, how we obtained the files that we did. But before that, we do want to mention something that has been released recently. A friend of mine, Nate Lewis with The Innocent, they are an organization that equips law enforcement to go out throughout the entire country. They equip law enforcement agencies all across this country to go after those that traffic children. And we've been told many times in this county that there is no human trafficking that takes place. The sheriff has said this so many times. If you've watched me for any length of time, you know that this is a massive hot topic for me. It was something that I ran on the campaign trail, and I specifically stated over and over again that many times we do not work to eradicate human trafficking in our own communities because we are worried who we are going to catch in the net. It is an absolute lie from the pit of hell if you say in Kootenai County there is no human trafficking. Anybody that is current, active, or even former law enforcement knows this to be a lie, that there is no human trafficking. In fact, it's quite the contrary. So I want to play a little collage to bring you down memory lane of what your own sheriff of Kootenai County has to say about human trafficking, his belief. And then I want you to hear Nate Lewis in his own words on a recent interview. We're going to play this YouTube clip. It's about 2 minutes long, but we're going to show you a QR code that you can download that full episode off of YouTube so you can see it in its entirety. Everything that Nate puts out is dynamite. So.
In Kootenai County?
Well, you tell me. You know, you can arrest somebody for sex trafficking. Have you seen it?
I'm asking you.
Well, I'm asking you.
It's your job, not his.
Is human trafficking occurring in Kootenai County? No.
I've actually publicly and, put it out there in the light for a political official who says these things are happening and gets so defensive about that this isn't happening here, this is not happening here.
Who is it?
Man, I don't know if I want to start that one. It's
okay.
Do
you fear saying the person's name?
Yeah, because they have a lot of authority in the community. Mm-hmm. And I don't doubt the fact that this person could potentially, actually has authority to do certain things and come after me or cause things to come. So it's fear, right? Because of a position, right? You're talking about an elected official in law enforcement. So there you go. There's your pieces. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to call this person out, but this person knows who it is. If they're listening right now, that I've gone up in front of the community where he showed up and the other opponent showed up, and he continues to go and say these things are happening. And I've sat with him and a senator in the state, and I asked him, and I said, look, here's the evidence. We went undercover online and we did these investigations, and there's a chief of police in your county who saw this evidence so much, said, well, we need somebody to do this full time. Let's host a training and let's bring all the people on. And potentially we should talk about, like, how can this nonprofit help fund your position to go proactively do this work? That's a chief of police in this county. And this person will continue to say, it's not happening. So much that I had to show up in front of the community, and I had to pull out the statutes underneath the state's laws of human trafficking and they break it down under the subcategories of human trafficking and child sex trafficking and what people can be arrested for and the numbers that go along with it, and actually dumb it down as dumb as you can get. I'm sorry, but you have to dumb it down to say like voyeurism, sending illegal photos, a male grown adult sending a photo holding his private parts to a child under the age of 18. Exploitation falls under human trafficking, the tip of the umbrella. Then I had to go into the actual jail and I had to type Control F, find, and then just type the word child in and see all the people that are not been arrested for a child crime. They're actually sleeping in that jail that night for child sex crimes. And it's not happening. So when people start defending it to no limit to publicly state that these things are happening, I cut them slack for a moment. And I say, I get it. You can't know everything about everything, but you should have somebody on your team that's an expert in one thing. Now, I don't deal with homicides. I don't deal with robberies, domestic violence. For the last half a decade, all I've done is child sex crimes and human trafficking and child sex trafficking. I know a little bit about it, and I'm in your office behind closed doors. At this point, you can have a little bit of humility and say like, hey, look, man, I don't know much about this, but I'm willing to learn. And maybe if this is a problem and you actually have the evidence, then maybe we can make this a priority.
Powerful. Nate says that he did not want to name the elected law enforcement official. Those of you that understand that we only have one elected law enforcement official in any county knows who he's talking about. And he's afraid of bringing what he brought to this individual out to the forefront and to report on it because he's worried about what this man, this elected official, the power that he has to go after him and what he can do. But let me tell you something, Nate. I want to remind you of something. That is, I've got your back. I've got your back, and there are many other men in this county that have your back. You keep doing what you're doing by exposing and going after these vile, evil individuals in our communities. You keep equipping law enforcement with the resources that it needs, and we have your back. I personally will have your back. If anybody in law enforcement goes after you, they will deal with me, and hell's coming with us, and we're going to go right after those that go after you. So stay strong and courageous, brother. We have your back.
And for those of you who want to hear that complete podcast with Nate Lewis, the QR code is up in the corner of your screen. You can link to that full episode that he was guest on over there on YouTube. You got some other things you were looking at.
Yeah, I want to bring up real quick this quote. I don't know who Liz Matthew is. Matthew.
Okay, let me give a little backstory on this. Mm-hmm. This is a sock puppet profile that came up just this week as we started to really release these audio tapes with Pastor Paul Van Noy. So we know that this is part of this political social influencer network. Mm-hmm. And what they do is they create, everybody says fake, sock puppet accounts. And sometimes they'll create sock puppet accounts to actually create their own opposition. And then in the comment section, they can argue with themselves to push their ideas and their political views in the comment section against fake opposition. You'll find sometimes those are the exact same person. We're going to be talking more about that end of the week or beginning of next week. This one here, yet another sock puppet account. My guess is all part of the same network, and you'll get left out of the room if you say, well, it's Stephanie Fetzer, it's Aaron Barnard, it's Catherine. You start naming names and they'll blame it on somebody else. It's not really the point exactly who it is, because it is part of that same social political network. Yeah. And we know that Stephanie Fetzer and Davalu Cummings provide sit-in on Monday meetings and giving political advisory to Pastor Paul Van Noy. So it is somebody in that network that is unhappy that we are exposing this and releasing the audio tapes who has created this sock puppet account. So now I give it to you, Dan Wilson.
Liz Matthew, whatever crony of Paul Van Noy, Stephanie Fetzer, Aaron Barnard, whatever. You guys are numerous. May the fleas of 1,000 camels infest your armpits. Pound sand. If you think for one moment, if you're going to try to claim that I am now supporting Riley, you're just a effing liar, because I've made it very clear that I don't support Riley on just about anything. Riley, as I call him, is Agent Tiki. Doesn't mean that there are things that he says that are right. Like all of you, there is the ability for all of us to have portions of us that speak truth. And if we happen to have the same common person or organization that we're exposing, so be it. But I'm not aligned with these guys, and you'll be hard pressed to ever be able to put me in the same room with that knucklehead. I can't stand him over the Angelo thing. He was so freaking hypocritical when I came out and exposed Angelo for his statements, volunteer statements that he gave to the Coeur d'Alene Police Department when he was caught coming out of a Asian massage parlor that was under investigation for human trafficking and happened to be a KCRCC rated and vetted and approved. And despite the videos that came out, they continue to solidly back him. I'm at war with the KCRCC. I'm at war with Paul Van Noy. As long as the lies and the hideous behavior continues. So, yeah, you're completely moronically wrong once again.
That has nothing. They actually know that they're wrong.
I know that, but I'm doing this for the.
We're doing this for the sake. Here is something that you all will know about Dan and I. We will never create, never, ever, ever, a sock puppet, fake, or burner account to pretend that we're being somebody we're not, to push some kind of narrative or to speak in a different voice and a different tone and protect ourselves by doing it. Yeah. Neither he nor I will ever do that. We will not create parody pages hiding our own names so that we can go after an opponent or somebody that we're wanting to expose.
Yeah.
If we are exposing Pastor Paul Van Noy, we are putting ourselves on the line doing that. So when you see these burner accounts, hello, think about where that's coming from. It is not coming from here. So when you see this divide again between the faction that is Pastor Paul Van Noy, Candlelight Church, his political advisors, and then Brent Regan and KCRCC, and these two battling it out, I think Dan answered the question perfectly. That the sock puppet account that's coming on here saying, because we're exposing Van Noy, oh, you're, start naming it and claiming it in there, and it's bogus. Again, show your face. Show your face.
I find that most of these people are cowards. Most of the KCRCC people are cowards. They work in packs and herds. They can't ever. And we knew this from all the loudmouth women. I love.
Yep.
I have great respect. My wife is one of the strongest women I know. I look up to her. I'm amazed by her. But there is nothing more dumb than loudmouth women who run their mouths online. They're all yippity yappity. And when they have the chance to meet you one-on-one, to bring all of their vitriol, their lies, their accusations to you in their face, even in their pack, they won't do it. That happened last year at Life Coffee House. Why are we talking about this again?
I was going to say.
Did I interrupt your thought?
Well, I don't know. This isn't what it was, but with the exception of one, when you talk about the loudmouth women, the vitriol, and they won't do it to your face. The one that did. Because I saw in a comment today, what is Erin Barnard? I know Erin Barnard personally. What has she ever, she's like this gracious, glorious woman of God. What has she ever done? Well, I'll tell you. I mean, I sat there and observed for myself. She was drunk. Mm-hmm. And she came, that gave her the little extra liquid courage she needed so that when she did see you at the end of an event and after people pushing her, because she had
been running her mouth for 2 solid months,
with disgusting, vile
accusing
things.
me, claiming that I had had an affair, that I left my children, that I wasn't a real law enforcement officer, that I was gay, that I abused people. I mean, all of the above.
So after being pushed, like, look, you're running your mouth like that, talk to this guy directly. She eventually was pushed into it, and nothing coherent came out of her mouth except to
screaming,
tell you to F off and screaming other obscenities.
I'm a slime ball.
That was what was
asshole. Yeah.
So that's what this core group that are political advisors to Paul Van Noy, when Dan talks about women who are pushing themselves on the community. And this was the thought that I was searching for while you were talking about that. It doesn't mean that women can't be active or be vocal. But my observation is it's the emotionalism.
Yeah.
It is the driven emotion, and we're voting on emotion. We're reacting emotionally in the comment section. And I have never seen a man who's doing great things that is spending his time reacting emotionally in a comment section on Facebook either. And they're coming out and name calling and doing that. I mean, like you're sinking to such a low, but that is the unfortunate side effect, and why I know we will have an upper hand, because what we produce and the truth is slow and methodical. It's not what they bank on, is that they get quick response from riling people up, getting you to be emotional and react emotionally. And that's what this group of women is banking on. So word of advice, stop doing it. Take a deep breath, take a step back, think more logically, go, I guess, take lessons on how to do it. You're not going to find me doing it.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath.
Let's go down memory lane. This is going to tie in to the videos that we're going to be playing. They're audio videos. But first, those of you that may be joining us for the first time and weren't aware, in 2024, I ran for sheriff in Kootenai County. And in fact, I ran as a Republican until early on, prior to the primaries, when I realized that the KCRCC, that's the Kootenai County Republican Central Committee, who basically are kingmakers, had already made up their mind who they were going to support and why they were going to support. And I said, you're not going to get rid of me that quick. I'm going to switch to an independent. While I was running for sheriff, I began going out into the community to introduce myself to people. That's what you do when you are running for the highest elected office in a county. And I thought, naively, because I'd been a first-generation homeschool kid myself in the 80s, small business owner for almost 25 years at that time. It's now closer to 30. Law enforcement officer, father of 5, homeschooled all of those kids, follower of Christ, reserve police officer for 12 years. I thought that was going to be a good enough resume to where people would say, hey, you align with all these values we continually scream about, like the Idaho Freedom Foundation and what they're trying to do legislatively. But I found out that they're all a bunch of liars, those that are running these organizations. And as I was out meeting, one of the people that I was encouraged to meet, I'm going to be very clear, it was merely a meeting, was Pastor Paul Van Noy, Candlelight Fellowship here in Coeur d'Alene. I'm going to remind you of the email that I sent to him before I really started figuring out how crooked this church, this pastor, I should say the church. I don't have an issue with the church or the people there.
I think
it's the issue with Paul Van Noy, and
that's an important distinction.
His fraud. And again, I didn't have this ready for you. We played it last week if you want to go back. But in January of 2024, I sent an email to Paul Van Noy, and it merely stated this: hello, I'm running for Kootenai County Sheriff as a Republican and would appreciate the opportunity to have a brief visit with Pastor Paul to introduce myself. I've included our press kit, as well as for more info on my background. You will also find more details at my website, theidahosheriff.com. Thank you in advance for your time, Dan Wilson. That was sent in January, the end of January 2024. Never received a response. People that were going to that church came up to me at numerous meetings that I had in meet and greets or private events, saying, you and your platform align so close with our pastor, you need to meet with him. And I kept telling them I had sent him an email, and then they would later on come back and say, well, he claims he never got it. Anyway, we've talked about this a lot, but for those of you that may have not heard this, we're going down a little bit memory lane. I never asked Paul Van Noy for an endorsement, never one time. There is absolutely zero proof that Paul would ever be able to show to contradict what I'm saying. He had many people in his congregation, and he even admits this, as we're going to hear, that were divided. They supported me, couldn't believe why he was supporting Bob Norris and not me. They were starting to get suspicious because he was untruthful to these people, but they, on their own accord, I continually told them, do not do this for me. I do not want any part of this. I figured out after months went by, Paul Van Noy was never going to meet with me and had no intention to.
For those of you just joining us, I want you to hang on. We are not just doing review. We're not beating a dead horse here. We do have never before heard audio that we are exposing, and that is coming up next. There's a reason, though, that, like Dan said, we're taking the walk down memory lane because he's setting the stage for this. So just hang on with us. And again, we're live right now. Share this feed to your page or profile. This is a very important message to get out to the people right here in Kootenai County.
So as the campaign season continued through 2024, we had somebody that was a supporter and happened to be a parishioner, attended Candlelight, that had advocated on their own accord for me to Paul. And while they were in this meeting, they recorded it. Remember, in Idaho, it's a one-party consent state. They recorded a conversation over the phone with Paul. And then, unbeknownst to me, because I didn't know any of this was going on, they then had a meeting with Paul Van Noy, and Davalu Cummings, former Homeland Security agent, happened to also be there. We're going to talk about this more coming up. But the individual that was advocating for me, taking Paul Van Noy to task as to why he was making the decisions that he was, gave us this recording. They were so appalled. We had this recording for 6 months.
Long time.
We never one time exposed it. We didn't bring it out during the campaign. We let it lie. But unfortunately, right after that, Paul Van Noy does what he does best, which is he plays a victim. If you've ever observed it, if you've ever been on the bad side of Paul, you realize that he has a unique way of spinning a story without anybody challenging him, and he makes these outrageous lies. He did that about me right after the election when he, on the pulpit, told them that I had, the people in the congregation and online, that I had threatened him. That Dan Wilson had threatened Paul Van Noy. Fabricated lie, complete lie. Fast forward months later, we decided to, at that time, we were protecting the identity of the individual that had made the recordings, and you guys understand why that would be. We released a transcript that we read the parts, so we didn't play the audio. And then people said, "You're lying, that never happened, you made it up."
The beauty of the transcript was that you could hear the voice, tone, and somewhat of the syntax of the person who had arranged that meeting, the churchgoer who had arranged that meeting. And it then puts everything, every response by Paul Van Noy and Davalu Cummings into context, because you understand back and forth. We will, while I'm thinking about it, we will be providing again, because we did this originally, but we will be providing again that full transcript that just removes some of the specifics of the churchgoer to protect that, but that you are then going to hear the intent and that full conversation, how often it was intercepted, redirected, those sorts of things. That will be made available on the libertywithoutcompromise.com website tomorrow. So we will be providing that because, again, tonight, never before heard audio, but it has been edited. So we
edited to take out the voice of the person asking the questions. Yes.
Max El Camino, we know your name's not El Camino. We see you on YouTube, so we're going to come back to that. This has been a detractor even earlier today. Somebody, again, another account on social media, and we expose these political influencers. They always have an agenda. He was active earlier today on our channels. Somebody who, again, clearly has showed up right at this time and place, who is bothered by the fact that we're exposing this audio. So we'll get back to that.
Again, we're bringing this out because of the lies, the continual lies of Paul Van Noy. Just to be clear on this. The only way to protect oneself and to expose the lies is to go down this route that we are going down. Understand that we didn't ever employ anybody to do this. I never asked for anybody to advocate for me to Paul Van Noy, because Dawna knows this. Frankly, I couldn't care less. Once a little time goes down the road and you figure out people and their lack of response and what they're saying about you behind your back in the community, a man with a code understands that there are those that I couldn't care less. Dawna knows that by June of 2024, I couldn't care less to ever talk with Paul Van Noy.
Well, there's that, but I want to give this in even better detail because we were talking about this the other night, and I was like, this is an important factor. You were running a campaign after all.
Yeah.
It obviously would make sense for you to connect with people who were known leaders in the community, and nothing nefarious about this. It's like, look, if I'm going to step up and run for office, there are conversations that I'm going to pursue for reasons of, and one thing you explained, you were never looking for an endorsement. None of that was going to come easy. You weren't thinking, I'm going to schedule a meeting and try to sway some dude behind the scenes to then give me a written endorsement and I can go around and brag about it. You always knew whatever you had to do, it was going to have to be earned. Not only that, you're not going to pursue the endorsement of somebody that you don't know and you don't personally understand the level of integrity. You were looking more to make connections because you said, hey, I understand I'm going to have to connect, even if it's going to make me uncomfortable or it's outside of my norm, because I would love speaking opportunities. I want the ability to schedule town halls so that I can share my message with this community. It was never just thinking you're going to have a meeting and buy somebody a burger.
Robust website, all my positions, my policies, so many town halls, so many private meet and greets, plus a live weekly town hall that we did every single day or every single Wednesday, every week throughout the entirety of the campaign for people to ask the hard questions. And we attempted to try an actual real debate with Bob Norris, and nobody, because the cowards, Paul Van Noy being one of them, Paul Van Noy, Brent Reagan, these leaders in their respective conservative circles. And you're going to hear Paul Van Noy talking about Norris. He knows Norris is a soup sandwich, but he's his friend. So last week we played the audio from the phone call with setting up the meeting that we're about ready to listen to. We're going to show a couple videos so that you can get some visuals of the individual that we're talking about, some background and context. And then I want to warn you that the audio is very, very difficult to hear, especially at the beginning. This was over an hour conversation. We've done our best to boost it. We have not put any subtitles on. Dawna has said that we have the transcripts that are ready to go. So if you, again, want to read those for yourself to see what was stated, by all means, we're going to make that available. We are going to be transparent. But we absolutely did our best. We're just two people that are doing this show for no pay, no compensation. We do it for community service to the community and for the cause of liberty. And Dawna has been working very hard to go through these clips to get them cleaned up. So bear with us. Halfway through, the audio does get better. And we are going to stop these, I'm calling it videos, this audio, because it's not an actual video that we're showing, but we're going to show a slide with the audio. And we're going to stop and we're going to talk about some of the lies and the manipulation that are taking place.
Are we doing this other van?
We are, and I'm just getting ready to cue that up now. So I want to go ahead and play what Paul Van Noy had to say 2 weeks ago tonight at his Wednesday night gathering. It was a Q&A. He was speaking to the congregation about being persecuted or something. But I want you to hear one of the things that he just recently stated.
And I'm going to pray for the next sheriff, whoever that might be. But you have no idea the kind of vitriolic treatment I've gotten. Well, there's one candidate that formerly ran in a political race that I didn't endorse, and that person has spent literally untold hours trying to do anything that person can do to discredit me and this church, only because I didn't endorse him. This is not a political speech. This is not a political center. We are a church. We are a church in the public square. We are a church of people who think.
I don't need to discredit you, Paul. You've discredited it yourself. And I think you're mixing up Dave Riley, who has been going after you as well. with his own issues. Those aren't necessarily my issues. But you discredit yourself. You are a liar, Paul. I'm going to say this again. I have no problem calling you out. Paul, where did I ever, in writing, in an email, personally to you, because you and I have never had an actual man-to-man conversation, only through your lackeys. I've never asked you for an endorsement. So for you to stand up there before your congregation and lie, back up that lie, Paul, or is this just one of those, you assume that everybody thinks you are, oh, wait, he is a big man in his own mind, that's important to make you feel better, so you can be a victim. Hours spent trying to discredit me because I wouldn't endorse you. Pound sand, Paul. Now let's play the next video. I want to give a little background to this.
Please do.
This is shout out to Casey Whalen. Now recently, you may, if you're in Kootenai County, may have heard about a good old bait and switch that the Candlelight crowd did with Dan Gookin. I don't think Dan had any part of this, just to be clear, but it was a meet and greet with Dan Gookin, Scott Haug, that was running for mayor of Post Falls. They were going to have this meet and greet up at Taco Works. It's a little food court up off of Prairie. It was advertised. Dave Riley and his group show up there. Casey Whalen happened to be filming it. And they were duped by Aaron Barnard, Stephanie Fetzer, who at the last minute switched the venue. And my understanding is they then created these flyers saying, hey, come meet us at this Taco Works for beer and pizza, which you can't bring your own beer. You can't bring your own pizza to this food court. And in essence, set up Dave Riley and groups that thought they were going there legitimately to meet with Gookin and with Scott Haug. And what happened was they played double agent on them, the Van Noy group, and they moved the event to another location, set these guys up, then called law enforcement and said, hey, they were coercing somebody to call law enforcement. But the long and short is Dave Riley got punked by the exact same thing that he did to Tom Luna down at the convention when he made those fake flyers for the pizza event for all the homeless, right?
I think Casey Whalen released today. He did a records request, and I think it was Stephanie Fetzer that called in. It's
so anyway,
her name to call in to CDAPD. Okay. It was a complete setup. That's
so they got punked, and Riley got punked by Aaron Bernard, who was his co-conspirator with what he did down in southern Idaho. So why am I saying this? Because Casey, when he was panning with his camera, he happened to catch two individuals that were out in the parking lot of where Riley and his group were being set up. I can't figure out a legitimate reason for them to have been there, especially since she is a advisor, as you're going to hear, to Paul Van Noy. But she and her husband, she's a former Homeland Security Special Agent for over 15 years, worked in human trafficking in New Mexico, and then several years for the Attorney General in Washington State as a tort claim investigator. She's involved in all sorts of things in Kootenai County, everything from Hayden Arts Commissions to Women Republican Federated to the KCRCC, Van Noy, all over the place.
Not created her own nonprofit for Back the Blue.
Her husband, David Cummings, is a former Customs and Border Patrol pilot, helicopter pilot, happens to also have flown for, and it's currently, my understanding, flying when it does fly for the Kootenai Regional Air Support Unit. Okay, lots of background because many of you are just hearing this for the first time. We're going to show a video of these two that were, my belief, were out there handling, making certain to be the lookouts for Riley and for Whalen and their entourage to make certain that they were detained there while the other event took place down at McKenzie River Pizza. Theory, but I think it's pretty credible. Let's watch this video. Okay, that was Davalu Cummings. The 80s called. They want their hairdo back.
Oh, you didn't.
I did.
Oh, you didn't.
Homeland Security. So we're now setting you up. We're going to start playing these audio files. Davalu Cummings is the female that Paul Van Noy brought in. If you recall last week's phone conversation, Paul Van Noy, to the congregate that recorded the conversation, said, hey, I want to bring somebody that's knowledgeable on the law so that, we can counter anything that you're going to say on behalf of Dan with somebody that understands whether or not lawfully any of that stuff can be done. This individual had no idea who Davalu Cummings was, but Paul brought Davalu because Paul couldn't just meet with this congregate one-on-one. He had to bring backup support because he knew that half the shit he was saying was unsubstantiated.
There's that. I want to remind you too, look, this was not really clean audio. We're competing with road noise. We're competing with HVAC. We're competing with various people who are different distances from a type of a microphone. We cleaned this up as best we can. The thing to remember, what we're bringing you today in exposing this, is we'll provide the transcript so you can go word by word and decode. It's also much more intelligible if you're wearing headphones. So there's that. But just take this as this is evidence. This is what we're providing is evidence that the conversation occurred. We're going to go through this in sections, and there are going to be things that you're going to miss. And you're going to say, well, wait a second, that was kind of muffled. I don't get it. But that's why we're going to discuss this section by section so we can break it down. And some of those things that are hard to hear or a bit muffled for good reason, we're going to fill in those blanks.
Yeah.
So when you're ready.
So we'll start this. Understand that it's probably going to be a while before you can really hear real well, but it will get better. I promise you that. Our levels are up as high as we can crank them.
Yeah, and there's going to be some thumping and bumping, so you do just have to bear through it. Like Dan said, it gets better and a bit smoother as it goes, and we're just trying to give you that idea and provide you the evidence that this conversation did actually indeed occur, and you're going to be hearing the voices of Pastor Paul Van Noy and one of his political advisors, Davalu Cummings. Timeline,
August 2024. We are coming in after introductions were made, things that are important to the conversation. So we are now going to enter into clip 31, where Davalu Cummings begins to speak about Dan Wilson and his posse and deputy reserve program.
Pretty much everything you said is vital. Fusion centers were created after 9/11 by DHS because the reason that the DHS was created is because there was a breakdown in communication between agencies, therefore, and it was mainly between the FBI and the immigration. And they dropped the ball, and these terrorists got in the country, and then 9/11 happened. So it was an attempt for interoperability so we wouldn't have a natural disaster like that again. FEMA was also placed under DHS, so the Secretary of DHS, whether you like him or not, because I don't, it does contain FEMA. So that's a mandated responsibility. And any natural disaster also has to have intel sharing and has to have law enforcement response. So yes, the Fusion Center is comprised of all that. The facade training, that is on the website, all that stuff. And the sheriff has been through that. He said that publicly. That is, it's the.
I'll put this real quick. She was just, you'll hear this in the transcripts. She was verifying that Bob Norris was trained with the Mossad and that it was because of counterintelligence when he worked at the Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department under the Homeland Security Wing right after 9/11. So that's what she was talking about.
Fusion centers have an anti-terrorist component to them. And so the best training that anybody can get anywhere on how to prevent terrorism is through Mossad and through the Israelis, because
This is the recent, right?
Primary.
So he's been through this before.
Who?
Bob.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if 4 years ago, because he might have already thought to himself, look, you guys already know all this. This could be abbreviated just because he is thinking in expedition, so defending anything, I'm just.
Okay. And again, I'll interject. Paul Van Noy while Davalu is talking about one thing, they're hitting Davalu with multiple things. And one of the things that Paul's doing is he's trying to justify why Bob Norris, when he did his survey for the Rating and Vetting Committee at the KCRCC, basically gave extremely short, non-detailed, lame-ass answers compared to mine that were many volumes almost. I mean, it was very in-depth. And they're trying to run interference, saying, well, he already did this once 4 years ago, so he just felt like that he really didn't have to do it again because everybody knew who he was. All right.
Yeah, that was exactly it. And you had both Davalu Cummings and Paul Van Noy covering for Sheriff Norris. Davalu was even spending time trying to go online on KCRCC website to find that old website because they wanted or that old survey of Bob Norris, because his one in 2024, the answers were so pathetic. Yeah. They were actually covering for him when asked about that. Well, he's filled this out before and everybody already knows who he is. So that's probably why.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Go.
Thing that came across my mind. I'm sorry. I guess I wanted to reflect on that just for a second.
Sure, go ahead. I'm just looking for that old survey. Yeah. Is what I'm doing. I'm not sure I'm going to.
The Reserve Deputy Program, I think that's self-explanatory. To develop a citizens posse of vetted individuals to assist the sheriff office in times of need to help maintain law, order, and security as mandated by law. I'm not being defensive or argumentative, but all of this looks to me like it is summarized in this brief. It's one and the same. This is detailed, and that is just a introductory comment that could include all this. Just wondering about that. If it's even possible, if it's legal, if it's financial, it seems to be like it would be highly unlikely to be reasonable in relationship to the liability problem.
So do you know, to try to fill that in so we'll understand, do you know what the purpose of the posse would be? Okay, but you don't know, so you can explain it just because obviously you don't have time to listen to the podcast. Okay, and how that different than the, what's it called? The Kootenai County currently has the Sheriff's Department works with the emergency management, and they have a 200-member-ish volunteer group that already do like search and rescue to be stood up. If there's a problem, they train and everything. How is that different? Do you mind if I ask a few more questions about that? Because I'd like to, it will, or maybe even inform you some things.
Okay, so if you're having a hard time listening, this individual that was advocating for me, that really wanted to represent me to Paul, extreme courage, first of all, because this individual hasn't had a lot of life experience, but came in. And remember, by this time, not only did we have our websites, my town hall, I'd already been to public forums. I'd been to, what do you call those, where they ask all the questions, like I did for NIF.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I don't know. They called them town halls.
Town halls.
They were just hosted by other
There was
entities.
nobody in the entire area that was actually paying attention to politics that did not know that one of the very first things that I was going to do was start a reserve deputy program that's within the umbrella of Idaho state law and post requirements. There was a pathway to use law enforcement that had recently retired to be able to get them repost certified up here and to put reserve deputies on the road to supplement current staffing levels at no additional cost to the community. That was one. The second one was a citizen posse where I called for any citizen that could pass a background check. I don't care if you are conservative. I don't care if you are liberal, but if you had a skill set, electrician, carpenter, excavator, accountant, any number of things, we wanted to put a vetted volunteer posse together, not armed. Everybody knows that I said this over and over again. We were not arming anybody. We wanted to have resources so that if we had any kind of a man-made or natural event, we knew who immediately to contact to help us start triaging our county to make it an extremely safe county. And that's what I said over and over. And what you're hearing now is you're hearing Davalu, who was a former federal agent for well over 15 years. Her husband was federal law enforcement, and she's trying to come in and say, well, why is this posse any different than the search and rescue that Bob Norris has? Because Bob Norris, as soon as he heard me say that I was going to have a posse, then all of a sudden he's like, well, my search and rescue, not the same thing, similar, but not the same thing. So she's trying to say, well, I don't really know. Can he actually do that? Damn well knew that I could, Davalu.
Yeah, it's not just that. It's that.
So he says he wants to institute a reserve.
Well, it's a matter of how she's innocently asking, as if she's not intertwined with the sheriff's office and with Bob Norris already, or that she doesn't already know the answers to
She's
these
an expert at interviewing.
She is.
A federal agent, a professional federal agent that is innocently trying to say, well, I don't know. It's a good cop, bad cop.
Before you start that, a reminder, you're going to hear that this is disjointed. So please understand that the churchgoer that was a part of this meeting, that has been edited out. And what's left are the voices of Pastor Paul Van Noy, Davalu Cummings. We're going to have transcripts available of both sides of that conversation. Those will be available on our website tomorrow. Share this feed to your page or profile so that more of you, let me hear your comments and questions in that comment section as we continue to play this audio.
Right.
Program. Is that okay? So there was something that passed in the legislature this last session that, and I don't have it, but it somehow put a wrench in the reserve program. So the reserve program and the post is the academy that law enforcement attends in the states. And so all those standards and that academy is administered through legislation by the state. And something happened legislatively that caused post, even though Reserve Academy is still on their website, they are not holding any, and they won't even answer any questions about reserves right now, because apparently that legislation put something at odds. And also, reserve officers in the state of Idaho have to be employed and paid. They're not free, and that's by statute. So that obviously is
liabilities,
exactly
insurance.
Exactly. So just so you understand.
Yeah, I do get that.
Okay.
Good.
My Norris's. This is the one from the paper. I didn't find the KCRCC, but it's got like all his schools. It's a much more.
I had a feeling that might be the case.
Okay. So we're going to actually slip to the next slide now, because what you just heard again was Davalu telling a half truth. So there are multiple layers to reserve law enforcement in the state of Idaho. What she was referring to is trying to say, well, they had stopped the academies and some of the other funding, but Davalu knew damn good and well that was not the approach that I was taking. I was taking a very good approach, which is certified law enforcement officers that have retired up to Kootenai County that still met the Idaho State Post requirements for being a reserve officer without any additional resources, without having to go through the academy, completely legal. And no, they're wrong. Liability insurance. Again, they're trying to equate the fact that you could have over at the very beginning a dozen seasoned 20, 30-year veterans that came from other agencies, Southern California, Northern California, Seattle, had all this experience that would come up here and work like I did for 12 years as a reserve officer for no pay. You're going to cover liability insurance, but the savings, like the city of Spokane, was over $800,000 a year by using reserve officers, which we did the work of full-time law enforcement, but we did it on a part-time basis. Now, the other thing that you hear here is that Davalu, uneducated former federal agent, stated that reserve officers had to be paid. That's horseshit. Again, it's a volunteer. She couldn't state the statutes. She couldn't state the post rules. And let's just argue for a second, say they have to technically be paid. You pay them like other agencies, $1 a year. That's what happens at Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. So you hear them running interference. They were using Bob Norris's talking points. They were already well embedded into the smear campaign once upon a time. Are we ready to go to that second one?
By this point, he probably thinks, look, you guys already know what I'm doing, to be abbreviated. And of course, I think, if I'm not mistaken, and again, I don't know this to be a fact, but I think he has the endorsement of the KCRCC.
Who, Bob?
Bob.
As with him.
Yeah.
He got the endorsement before Dan changed parties.
Two independent.
And Dan is now running as an independent.
Right.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So,
Here's another lie. Davalu, they're again trying to justify Bob's abysmal answers to this, this rating vetting survey that the KCRCC just thinks is the cat's meow. And what Davalu and Paul are doing is they're running interference for Paul once again. And they're saying, Davalu says something that was factually incorrect. She said, well, Bob already had the endorsement before Dan decided to switch to independent. That's an absolute lie. I switched to independent before any of those results were ever let, because I saw what people like Davalu were doing in the local Kootenai County Republican Central Committee. So I'm here to tell you that again is yet another lie, that these people, they just can't stop not telling the truth.
I'm only thinking about the nature of why the statement is brief compared to elaborated upon. And if I were Dan, I would elaborate too, because nobody knows anything about what he thinks. Whereas maybe Bob thinks everybody knows what I believe already. So I don't know.
Just to let you know, on more questions, but I'm not going to ask them because they come up all the time. I think the statements are awesome. Anybody wants to do that. Question is, how do you do that? Because I can say that I want to be queen of the world, and it may sound good, but how is it even possible for me to do that? So there are some underlying issues with some of those things that the probability of a local sheriff even being able to do that is called into question, whether it's immigration enforcement. Immigration enforcement rests in the authority of the federal government. That's constitutional. The only way that a local sheriff or even a police department administer any kind of immigration authority is to be delegated that from the federal government. And the federal government, since Obama, has not delegated that authority to anyone except jails and prisons. And so it's not like, so when you say I'm going to, or I'm going to keep this terrorist free, or that sounds great, and we all want that. I think what we want to understand is how. And how is that different than what the incumbent is already doing?
Okay, so what we're going to say is, so she said, well, we like what he has to say, but we always want to know, well, how? I mean, after all, as she says, I could say that I'm the Queen of England, but how do I do that?
Sounds good, but how do I do it? The other thing to keep in mind, again, this is a churchgoer having a conversation with their pastor. Unbeknownst to the churchgoer, the consultant, Davalu Cummings, was in the room to help field anything that was being stated or questioned.
She was cover man for Paul Van Noy.
But if you listen to her, I'm listening to this, and in part I'm suffering from boredom, because one of the tactics is Davalu jumps into the conversation, redirects it, and she's absolutely exhausting the person that came in there to move through, like systematically move through what their points were and areas of concern. And Davalu will just redirect and responding, and it's like, what does this have to do with anything? And it's exhausting you, or the person that is putting out great effort in order to have this conversation with their pastor.
And it's the maligning, because Davalu, we're going to talk about this a little bit later, never one time bothered, like Paul, to come to a town hall and ask me hard, direct questions. Anybody that went to any of my town halls knew
have time
that before I ever gave my opinion in my statements, I had already consulted with subject matter experts in the fields. And I was the only person that before Trump was elected this last time that said the only way that you beat this illegal immigration taking place is you go after the NGOs. You guys all remember DOJ. You remember USAID. You remember when they were exposing the light at the beginning of this year about all the NGOs and what they were doing. And Davalu, once again, as a federal agent, knows damn good and well what I was saying was accurate, that I was formulating a coalition of people from all over the area to come up with practical ways that we could enforce immigration here in ways that were creative, that the federal government was unwilling to do to protect our own communities. Dawna and I went down to the border in January of 24. We were near Sassabee Crossing. We saw hundreds of military-age males. We recorded it. We came back. We reported it to the people to tell them what's going on. Bob Norris never made it down there. Davalu knew what was going on. She knew that the solutions that I was stating, and they were never muddy, including the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office must have a forensic audit of the books from the ground up. You're another liar, Davalu, because you know damn good and well that I did have solutions. I wasn't just merely like a lot of these politicians lobbing shit and then hoping nobody called me on it. I actually had policies. Oh, and here's one for you. Bob Norris doesn't have this. I had doctrines. I had Dan Wilson doctrines that were backing up my pursuit for the office of sheriff.
And the reason we know that Davalu Cummings, and she's, again, politically advising Pastor Paul Van Noy, they knew that Dan was a man with a mission, that he was stating clearly what his intent was or intentions were for that office and putting that out first and foremost. They knew what those were because they were perfectly prepared for as counter opposition.
Yeah.
They were perfectly prepared to come out and make, as they accuse us of, innuendo and being vague. And it's the same old word Stephanie Fetzer's been using. I mean, I've got screenshots of her using innuendo 10 years ago, 5-6 years ago, and brought the same technique here. They were well aware what a man with ideas and the mission and how he was going to implement it. They understood very well the message because they were perfectly prepared with the counter opposition in this meeting and put that out to all the local GOP so that they all knew how to get on board with it.
Let's continue on.
With what the incumbent's doing that makes Dan's plan better, but there's no plan. I mean, I'm going to do it. I'm Dan. I'm going to do it. And I love that. But how?
Forgive me, I think that's well stated. And with my experiences, I told you the phone, Bob and I have been working together now very closely for the last few years. And for example, in this particular context, we've worked together on this, and I am now more aware than I ever was before on what he legally can and cannot do. But even then has been very proactive in doing what I've asked him to do. I think I told you on the phone that he's never let me down. I realize that there are people that have been disappointed for a lot of reasons, but my personal issues, example, there was a busload of people being dropped off, and I called them and I said, hey, go check it out. He went over, checked it out. They were all legal, but they wouldn't look legal to me. And if they weren't legal, what are you going to do? And so he's thought this through as well, and I get it. And I do appreciate it, that there is some sense of protectiveness. Were you here last night for church?
I was not.
Yeah. One of our veterans went like nuts, and I had to hold back my own emotions because the illustration I used was, we got a major illegal immigration problem, and our borders being wide open, and now with all this nonsense you're hearing from Kamala Harris. At what point do we end up reacting in a way that we cannot exercise? I mean, for my emotions are we going to wait till they're busting down my front door? At what point do I say, no, you're not coming into my house? The reaction of the American population that are conservative feel the same way about the border. Nearly to the point where we're going to say, well, we're going to just create our own army, and we're going to go position ourselves, and our snipers are going to take you out if you cross our border. And you realize you can't, unless we're ready to have a civil war. Of course, none of us want that. And so these things make me very nervous. Inciting that kind of emotion in our populace. I'll use an illustration because my wife and I were talking about this. Gosh, I think it was maybe in 2000 when we were COVID. Everything was crazy, and Brenda and I were talking about civil war and what could be taking place in the neighborhoods and so forth. And I told her, I said, I want you to put this in perspective. Are you willing to shoot David? David lives next door to me. He is my neighbor, and he's a liberal. And he would be my adversary. And all of a sudden, you sober up really quick when you think about the horrifying nature. I mean, nobody in their right mind should ever want a civil war. I mean, inevitable in some ways in my mind, but oh man. Admittedly, this is my first comment that I'm going to say. It scares me a little to have a guy like Dan incite that kind of thinking, because I don't know that he knows what he's saying. And there is a Bundy-like spirit on that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
We got to stop this. There was so much there. One, did you catch it that he is close friends with Bob, that he has called Bob, Sheriff Norris, before to have him go check out a suspicious bus at a local store, and Bob went down there. But, Dan doesn't understand what he can or can't do legally. Even though I was a cop for 12 years, I actually put people in jail. I charged them. I went to court. I understand the law probably better than Paul does from the sound of it, and the Fed, Davalu. But listen to what they said there. They said Paul claims that there was a veteran at one of his services that went off on immigration. Do you guys remember the way the environment was around the country a year ago before Trump was reelected? Do you remember all of the hand-wringing, the concern? And this was something that people continually would come up to me at my town halls. And there's a famous one, we have it on recording, where somebody in the audience, I think it was a federal provocateur, wanted me to say that I was going to take up arms as sheriff and lead a rebellion against federal officers. And I flat out rejected that over and over, because that is not the way the Constitution lays out for local jurisdiction, the offices of the sheriff, to just decide when he is or isn't going to obey lawful orders. They misunderstood the fine line between a sheriff that has to stand up for the Bill of Rights versus, we just don't like what you're doing, we're going to go to war. And see that he frames this and then tries to start insinuating, lying about what I had said when I said just the opposite. And he's now trying to say, well, Dan is attracting all these people, and I'm just afraid that he's going to invoke a civil war. And I didn't want to kill my neighbor. I asked my wife, could you kill David, our next door neighbor? And I decided that I couldn't do it. But do you guys hear the manipulation and the projecting, the changing of the narrative, the Saul Alinsky tactics that we are seeing play out in real time?
And without a recording short of that, you would never know it. And again, he's speaking in a tone as though, here he has such great concerns about things Dan Wilson has supposedly said or what his message supposedly is. But a reminder, anybody jumping on this in the middle, Pastor Paul Van Noy, he had never spoken to you.
No, by this point, it was 7 months past when I had given an introductory email requesting to meet up with him however he wanted to.
Because if you got to get to him, you got to know, you got to get to him the right way.
We're going to hear him in his own words.
Coming up. Yeah. It's coming up. Don't go anywhere.
If you thought last week was bad with what he said about how I needed to court him, wait until you hear what he has to say coming up.
It gets better.
Let's
do it.
By that, you know what I mean by Bundy and some of the family issues that they've had in their properties, and friends of mine that went to prison. One of my very closest friends for many, many years was Todd Engel. Todd Engel, he went to prison for a long time. Do you know Todd?
I've heard the name, but I don't know him. No.
I led him to the Lord. I discipled him, and he had this, what I would call the Bundy spirit, if you want to use that terrible expression, which now I'll ask for confidentiality as well. And I used to try to talk him off the line all the time. I said, dude, you got to stand down. You can't do this. Until finally, when the Bundy Ranch issue came up there, and he ended up getting everything he owned seized. Went for many years. And I remember, sorry, this is emotional for me.
No.
Really emotional for me.
Now he's going to cry.
The Lord, and I discipled him. I sat outside of that prison in Lompoc, California, I think it was. And my wife and I sat there and I prayed for him and just wept and wept and wept, knowing that the guy that I led to Christ was behind those doors for trying to do what he believed, but he went about it the wrong way and overreacted to the point where he ended up going to federal prison. He's now out. Wow. I don't want us to become incited, and it makes me nervous. And I realize that I get it. This is why I brought up last night. Sorry, I'm taking too much time. when the veteran spoke up, and by the time he had the microphone, we do live Q&As. I don't know if you guys are familiar with it. He didn't ask a question. He went on a rant. He finally brought it around to a question like, what are we going to do? And of course, my first question is, I'm a theologian, but everything in me was, even as calmly as I want to approach these things legally, ethically, morally, biblically, I lean right in hard. That's why I said, if it was my front door, what would I do? That's why I want to tell Nancy Pelosi, take the front door off your house. And if you're going to talk about this like that, then take down the gates and take down your security and just let them come move into your living room. Exactly what she's doing on a larger scale, and we don't see it that way. But man, we can't react poorly. It requires so much careful, legal, ethical, moral thought. That one, I'm sorry, I'm capitalizing on it. It scares me to death of a Dan Wilson. He's going to get the guys that are just right on that edge. They're going to go over and do the Todd Engel factor. And man, that worries me. Is that okay to say it that way?
No, I think it is okay to say that. Well, in the
Okay. So did you catch that? He was concerned, and I make him afraid because I was going to incite all these guys to violence. You bald-faced freaking liar. Nothing could be further from the truth. There is so much media coverage of me. I was the most transparent candidate to ever run in Kootenai County. Everything laid out for you guys to see. And you have this guy who knew it, and he's going to go on to admit later on that he went to our website. Bob Norris was feeding him stuff, and yet look at the lies that he's saying. Look at the way he's trying to frame me as a fringe guy that was going to start a civil war. Let's go on to that next one. What do you guys think? Drop your comments.
Yeah, I was going to tell you again. This is an edited, fractured conversation because we've taken out the churchgoer that scheduled that meeting. We're competing with road noise, HVAC noise, construction that's going on outside the building. So we've done our best to enhance this audio. Full transcripts will be available on our website tomorrow, libertywithoutcompromise.com.
It is actually, they're not even authorized to ask somebody what their citizenship is unless they're processing into the jail as part of their bio. And if the person doesn't want to tell them, they don't have to tell them.
I don't know that he did.
Well, no, but I'm just saying, I'm not saying that he did anything wrong.
Yeah.
I'm saying that, and I watch the news all the time, and we talk about irregularities. The problem is that this administration, is people can't, you're purple, I came across the border, you're from XYZ country, we're going to deport you. Because this administration is giving them refugee status or asylum status to these people because they're here legally. So, yes, we have an immigration problem, but this administration has made it almost impossible for anybody to do anything about it. And it's just crazy by that. It doesn't matter who the sheriff is. If the person's legal and they've got papers, we may not like it, but that's what the Biden administration has done to us. I definitely think that's something that Bob and the sheriff has a problem because of what the sheriff is
100%.
doing now.
It's high on his registered priority list, even though it's not. That's why I wanted to mention it, because I know him and I know the way he's functioning in that arena. And so, anyway, I've taken a lot of your time now, so I'm going to...
And it's just like, we throw up our hands, like you say. What are we going to do about it?
Comment, if they came in here illegally, they did.
What is the violation of law that a local sheriff can arrest somebody on or can enforce on somebody that's smuggling? Because that's a federal statute that's reserved for federal law enforcement. Like it or not, constitutional or not, that's the way it is. And I don't, but actually constitutionally it says that. But even the way that it's been interpreted through the courts over the years,
we have a much bigger problem than we can solve locally.
Oh, yeah.
And the courts is a big start.
Because I've actually worked on human smuggling cases where people were being smuggled across the border and then on into the interior. And so what that would take to get it prosecuted with the U.S. Attorney's Office would be you have to have two witnesses, that group, they automatically get a visa, testify, and then they get bond, go up to testify, And their visas can be canceled, but where are they? You can't find them. It's
Man, this is boring. No shit, Sherlock. You are filibustering again, lying about what I never said. This was straight out of the Bob Norris, Bruce Matari playbook, which is, and we caught Bob actually using a soundbite for me to try to claim that I'd said one thing. The only problem was we had the full recording. We were able to play it in context to say, I already know federal law versus local and state law. My main platform was, what can we do until the state enacts relief for us in order to protect ourselves and our borders? But what do we do in the meantime? How do we come up with creative, lawful ways to start curbing, to make this a county that is inhospitable to the NGOs and the illegal activity taking place? And they're working overtime because Bob Norris never had a platform that he ran on. He never had anything other than the best indicator of somebody's future performance is based on their past performance. And they knew it. This is why they had to continually, in their areas of influence, they had to lie and spread it. And many of you probably bought into this lie because rather than come to the source and listen to what I was saying with my credible ideas and how I prove them, no, instead you want to listen to Davalu and Paul Van Noy.
Yeah, you're exactly right. They had to use their areas of influence. And then Ed DePriest made a comment. It sure seems that Davalu, or he says she, seems to be working real hard to dominate and steer the conversation. Mm-hmm. And I responded that is exactly right. That is exactly, it's very tactical, highly focused. That is exactly what she's doing.
Federal Agent 101.
Continue.
Hard. It's even hard for the federal government to do it.
Because of the broken system.
Because of the laws.
By the time they catch and release, they have a court date that's 3 or 4 years from now. They have a free pass for 3 or 4 years.
Immigration judges are administrative judges. And so you know what that means. By an administration that has a bent one way or the other. So if you continue with a liberal president, vice president administration, the continuation of liberally appointed judges is going to continue. So all these people that have this temporary status in the United States.
And that's Davalu Cummings. She just continues on exhausting the churchgoer who scheduled this in the first place. She just goes on and on, derailing.
Yeah, you have whatever. And you can stay here. And so that's something you can't fix short of federal legislation. And it's frustrating. We can't do anything about it. You can arrest all the bodies you want to. So let's say somebody commits an assault and Dan or Bob arrest them and find out they're illegal. So one of two things will typically happen. So if for some reason that person is given bond to await those charges in court, if ICE doesn't take them, well, ICE can take them and deport them, which means those charges stay outstanding and they never serve prison time. They're never held accountable. Or they come in, they're probably going to be given bond because the system's broken and most people make bond. And they're going to abscond and they'll never stand for those charges. If they do stand for those charges and go to prison, once they're out of prison, depending on what the administration, the federal administration's priorities are, they may be released right back out on the street illegally, and nobody will deport them. Because if the federal government doesn't deport them, I can't take them.
Yeah, let's go ahead and do that.
I'd love to take them.
She goes on, and we're playing this so that you guys can hear that we're not taking things out of context. I don't know, is that volume down or is it just in my headset?
I've turned it down. I pulled it down.
So once again, she's completely making shit up. I never one time for 1 second, knowing who was heading DHS, knowing who was the administration, ever said that I was going to arrest illegals and deport them. How? That was not the point. The point was to use current laws like we do with drug raids and drug stings and task force, and we go after the NGOs that are violating United States, or rather Idaho state law. So she is trying to make a false claim, and you'll never find out one time where I ever said we are going to arrest illegals, because I knew that you can't do it. But you know what's interesting is she's also backing up Terry Forrester, who runs labor consultants here in Coeur d'Alene. And his business is to provide the temporary work visas that many of these people that Bob Norris was claiming that he saw on the buses last year were actually temporary workers. And you know what's real funny about all that? Terry Forster also happened to be one of the $100,000 donors, according to Mark Ellis, to the Kootenai County Regional Air Support Unit, the helicopter, you know, that Davalu Cummings' husband, the former Fed, that worked for Borders and Customs, is flying and heading up. So, I mean, you can't make this stuff up, folks. Exactly what's going on here. Let's go ahead and play the next slide or next video, 35.
Yeah, and we were...
Or 34.
We were talking over that a little bit because that was Davalu Cummings that really had sequestered that conversation, derailing it, taking it in a direction she wanted to go, and absolutely exhausting the churchgoer that went there to have an appointment with their pastor.
Yeah.
Deputize people that work like in the DMV and that kind of thing?
That's my question. I got article here, Russ. Yeah.
Because don't all the employees that work in the Department of Motor Vehicles, aren't they all sworn?
I don't know the answer to that question, and I think my question
might be.
I don't know the answer to this question. I know partial answer. I don't know what it means to be a special deputy. Ask Sheriff Norris point blank, does Matari have access to the database, the law enforcement database? And he told me no. I have asked that of other people in the Sheriff's Department about that, or that, and it's not a cross designation. It's an advisory deputization. Cross designation is different, at least historically in my mind, from what I've been through. So the like NCIC, which is the National Crime Information Center database, restricts who can even have access to that. When a dispatcher, when a call comes in from a deputy or a police officer on the street, can you run XYZ? They put in the designator for that officer so that it creates an electronic log, can be researched later if somebody runs something they shouldn't.
Sure.
So, because I'm like, you mean this guy? I was concerned. Does this guy have access to this? Told by the sheriff and others that is not what that is. That I was told that the status was so that for that particular instance, so that Bruce could attend some of the meetings that the sheriff had to attend, where there might be information that wouldn't normally be released to the public. That here. And that's what I was told. But I keep hearing this special deputy turn around, but nobody can seem to define what that is or what the process is. Is it on an honorary title? What does it do? So what is Dan's understanding of what that is?
Okay, well, so we're going to interject here because this is one of the topics that I ran continually opposed to, which is Bob Norris. And we first learned of this in the Coeur d'Alene Press article, November 18, 2023, titled Kootenai County Sheriff's Office Cross Deputizations and Special Deputizations. And I'm going to just say the cross deputizations is for other sworn law enforcement entities to be able to do police action inside our county. The special deputization is what Bob Norris has brought the model from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department. We can go into that another time, but in essence, what he did here is he took County Commissioner Bruce Matari, who prior to being a county commissioner was Bob Norris's campaign manager. Bruce Matari came to Kootenai County in the mid-2000s from Washington, D.C. All of a sudden arrived here, had a shady past with his Blue Hippo predatory lending companies, owned some other internet companies here, don't know exactly what all he does, but he was Bob Norris's campaign manager. And as soon as Bob Norris won the office of sheriff after he was sworn in, he gives Bruce Matari this special deputization. And they are talking like lovebirds to the Coeur d'Alene Press about this arrangement. So when Davalu says, well, we don't really know, nobody can define it, bullshit. And you're a federal officer, you know how it works. Here is what was going on. Bruce Matari, and Bob Norris has said this repeatedly, Even after he became a county commissioner, he was the only one of 3 county commissioners to hold this special deputization. They're the legislative part of county government. Bob Norris, as sheriff, is the executive, and they are commingled. And Davalu's trying to say, well, it's so that Bruce can sit on sensitive meetings with the sheriff, and that way he's bound not to say anything because he has a special deputization. Like if somebody's going to raid a house or do a SWAT call and he hears about it, he can't mention it. It's bullshit. And what I said a long time ago is that Bruce Matari, we want to know as a special deputy status badge, because he wears a badge on his lapel. We understand he has an ID card. What information does he have that is considered to be privileged law enforcement for your eyes only information? And as a politician in this county, I'm not comfortable with any politician, especially best friends with Bob, to have a special ability to find out information that the rest of us don't have access to, he shouldn't have access to. And they try to turn around saying, well, I was claiming that he had access to all the police databases, NCIC. No, here's the way it works is information can be shared from sources, from captains, from Norris himself, share whatever information. And so Davalu, knowing that this is a sketchy thing, and no matter what Bryant, whatever his name is, the former prosecutor, Bushling had to say about it, it is clearly a violation. I don't care if you say this only applies to federal, it's the principle. They do not want, the founders did not want us mixing our pro-equal branches of government. Think about that. The person that sits on the budget hearings and approves expenditures and budgets and liability, like the Kootenai Regional Air Support Unit that they're trying now to pawn onto the county, Bruce Matari, as a special deputy, sits in and makes decisions that affect Bob.
To recenter this conversation, this part of the audio tapes, you're hearing the voices of Pastor Paul Van Noy and Davalu Cummings. There is a churchgoer that scheduled this meeting, and the question of concern was the special deputization of Bruce Matari and the previous relationship between Bruce Matari and Sheriff Bob Norris, that Bruce had formerly been his campaign manager. You're going to notice here in a second that what Davalu Cummings starts to do is run interference between for this the concern over Bruce Matari and Sheriff Norris's relationship. Davalu Cummings jumps in again, redirects, and says, insinuates that she's spoken with Matari, and if somebody wants to think something seems suspicious, they're going to find it suspicious. They're going to find suspicion. So it might be a little bit slightly unintelligible and hard to understand, but Davalu Cummings is there most definitely as a political operative, even on the behest of Bruce Matari.
Well, by the way, remember,
Davalu
was at one time chairman of the Republican Women Federated, and Bruce Matari's wife then took that over. So, I mean, they all run in the same circles. Okay, we'll keep going.
Go.
It definitely started out, the relationship started out before Matari became a commissioner. He was his campaign manager. Campaign managers and everything, it's for the purpose of being, if he's his campaign manager, he's going to work with him in areas where we may be talking about, Davalu is, we're going to have to conduct a SWAT raid on Davalu's house, and if Matari happens to be sitting in or happens to overhear that because he's the sheriff, you wouldn't want that out. So
again, now you have Davalu Cummings in here just drawing like a really weird, making a weird correlation. Like if this happens, then that, and that's why Matari needs this special deputy. It's weird.
Yeah. She's a stupid federal agent if she really believes that.
The public should not know everything that
she doesn't believe it. She came prepared with her talking points. What it is.
With Matari, the sheriff came from California, Matari came from Virginia. They didn't know each other until they got there. And I don't know how they became friends or how they became involved with that first campaign. But I don't know if what I'm trying to understand what makes that suspicious.
I'll at least give you this comment from me personally, so you don't feel that I would be defensive about that. And as a sheriff captain, and that's deputization too. And I was in the offices. I heard everything. I saw everything. I did ride-alongs. I didn't do jail. I was a patrol chaplain. And so
Paul's talking about being a chaplain.
But my position here. And
Paul Van Noy was saying he too had a special deputization, and that was as part of his chaplaincy.
There's a money clip coming up, so I'm going to make certain we hear this because Paul's going to state that he opposes this relationship. So that's one good thing on Paul.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it. I don't the tight relation between them. In fact, and Bob knows this, told him to his face, eye to eye. And I also advocated strongly for John Padula to be on the county commissioners. And even though he did not win, even in my conversations with Bob after the election, when now Eberline is the guy, which was not the guy that Bob wanted. I was happy that Eberline won, not Bob's guy, because I was wanting to be certain that there's some check and balances there. Another question, why? Why would that work? There is a very simple answer, and this is going to sound like something that I am opposed to Bob about. And I'm not blind. I don't see him as an angel walking on clouds. He wants the power. He wants to be able to get done his agenda, some of which I really like. I'm looking ahead.
Bob really, really wants the power. Paul supports this.
Some of your notes, and we're limited on time about the budget and all the increases in the budget. I am applauding him for that. And I know that would be exactly the opposite of what you would probably want, him to pay those deputies more. I want them to improve their serve. And so this is, again, where you might end up with a conflict of concepts. And we couldn't even keep a deputy in this town because they were getting paid worse than an elementary.
We're going to continue on this budget in the next audio clip. You have Paul Van Noy saying, look, I want to empower Norris. Norris, wants to get stuff done. He wants the power. That was Paul's words.
Hear that again?
Norris wants the power, and he supports it because he needs to get done whatever his agenda is. He's going to be a little bipolar in the next clip because he kind of walks some of that back. But let's go ahead and listen to our next clip.
And I realize that the county commissioners have power. So now I'm not advocating for or against, but I understand a human motive. And if he has a human motive and he has an agenda and he wants to accomplish it, he's going to look for people that he can work with. That's what's happened. And this is also why I say check and balance. Let's not have a monopoly. And which is one of the reasons I was after Padula, because I knew that Padula would be the tension in the room, as if Leslie isn't already.
And I totally endorse everything that you just said.
Okay.
Everything. The problem is a lot of people don't understand perception is reality.
Yeah.
So there may be absolutely nothing nefarious about anything.
Right. But if it looks
bad,
suspicious.
Because I know personally that it was brought up to Matari that the perception looked bad between him and Bob. And that as a county commissioner, he should not be involved in Norris's campaign. And the response, basically, there's no law against it. And Idaho does not have an ethics commission.
You're damn right it doesn't.
You can't even report what appears to be an ethics violation. So, yeah.
It doesn't mean we have to like it.
We don't like it. And do I like that relationship? No. Yeah. I don't.
Yeah, we're probably on the same team there. Yeah, we've had an hour. But let me be generous and gracious to you, and let me just extend another.
There you have both Paul Van Noy and Davalu Cummings playing both sides. Well, we don't really like the relationship between Matari and Bob Norris either.
But notice what they said as well, which is Davalu. Idaho doesn't prohibit this.
Yeah. There's no statute against it.
But okay, there is no statute. Idaho has a real problem with oversight on ethics. The problem is just because something isn't illegal doesn't mean it's ethically right. And you guys in Kootenai County are apparently all fine and dandy with the county commissioner who's been leading the increase, the exponential increase in the sheriff's budget where he's never told no. It went from 33 million roughly under Paul Wolfinger when Bob took over to now 5 years, over 50 some million dollars.
Ben.
Yeah, who did I
Wolfinger?
say?
Paul.
I meant Ben Wolfinger. Thank you. Look, this is horseshit. But nobody in Kootenai County, hey, Brent Reagan, Mr. I stand for integrity. You don't seem to ever understand when there is an ethics issue and optics, and you aren't vocal about calling any of this shit out. Paul apparently doesn't like it, but he's not going to say it publicly.
Context, I don't want to rely on Spokane. And I think it's kind of cool that he raised $500,000 from private donors. I mean, I know the minutia, so I don't have an opinion, but I will at least say that I'm not really a big fan of trying to be partners with Spokane. Something called Spokompton.
He does. Do you know their relationship? Well, what's illegal about that? 2B visas are legal immigration. Just there are a certain number of visas that are issued by the State Department. State Department issues visas. So neither the Sheriff's Department nor Terry issue visas. But yes, Terry is, it is a nonprofit. Just so you know, the helicopter is a nonprofit. And
okay, again, she's talking about Terry Forrester, Labor Services, that provides these temporary work visas. And she's saying, again, that, you know, on these different budgets and things that are costing, including the helicopter, you'll see this in the transcripts. It'll make better sense with the leading question. But she's justifying, along with Paul, well, you know, you got guys that are paying $100,000 and compensating, Kootenai County Sheriff's Office. And, you know, this is all great things. She's boring. I mean, if I were a suspect and she was interrogating me, I would actually confess, because her going on and on reminds me almost of Geneva Convention violations. It's like waterboarding, listening to her drone on about shit that doesn't even apply.
She's there to wear you down. Yeah. She has done it for a career. She knows it is intentional, and that is exactly what's going on.
Yeah.
They raised funds. The Sheriff's Office gave $100,000 of asset forfeiture money, which is federal money for things that they seize. You seize a car, they can share that back. Yeah. And then the $10,000 that they normally would give.
It wasn't our tax.
It wasn't our tax bill.
Tribe gives away millions of dollars every year.
And do you know that the Kootenai tribe, they're a sovereign nation, putting with the federal government?
Okay. I can't help it. There's so much here. Look, she is advocating. You guys understand? She is advocating for this helicopter program, which has been a debacle. We're not going to go into this. I bet
you're going to tell us why.
No, we're just.
Oh, you're not.
Well, I'm going to tell why.
Yeah.
The reason why she is running cover. Not only is she a personal friend of Bob Norris, but also
Terry Seymour. Just want to say hi to Terry Seymour.
Oh, hey Terry. Look, her husband that you saw in that clip we played earlier from outside of Taco Works, David Cummings, was former federal law enforcement flying for Borders and Customs. He was a former military helicopter pilot, and he's flying this helicopter for Bob Norris. So weird how Davalu is advocating for this giant budget suck to the county budget, which they're trying to now offload. And anything that Dan Wilson says is completely unfounded because, you know, she was a federal agent. She understands how these things work. And Dan was just a part-time fake police officer in Washington.
Interesting side note. They gave a bunch of money to Coeur d'Alene High School. Coeur d'Alene High School has their logo burned into their football field. Removed the cross. Turning for the Coeur d'Alene tribe, this
you know what? Shut this one off. Yeah. This is Paul going on, changing the subject again, because he's talking about how, you know, Terry Forrester gave $100,000 to other businessmen, and the tribe gave $200,000. Now, we asked the question right after the $200,000 donation for this volunteer helicopter, purchase, the tribe requested from Bob Norris, the sheriff who has jurisdiction down on tribal land for non-tribal members, they requested and were granted after this $200,000 donation the ability to take over as primary law enforcement on tribal lands that's down near the casino. So this is now Paul trailing off. He said just a second ago, I'm going to be gracious and give you more time because, I've done a lot of talking. And he proceeds to say, well, the tribe, they gave us a bunch of money for a school. And
yes, you have to understand the churchgoers scheduled this meeting. They came with very pointed facts to move through an agenda, extremely organized. And at every point along the way, this conversation was sequestered by Pastor Paul Van Noy and Davalu Cummings. And what you're hearing right now, we're going to skip past that. I mean, like boredom fest. Yep. But Paul Van Noy, again, just derails the conversation and goes on, because we're talking about Coeur d'Alene tribe as it relates to the donation to the helicopter program. I'm going to now tell my story about something that had to do with a cross and the logo on the football field. And you're like, what is going on? Does it have
to do with the sheriff's race? Now,
it has nothing.
These videos are going to get faster. I promise her. We're done with the really long, boring ones. We're going to go ahead and start into this next one. We're going to start wrapping it up, probably about another 20 minutes, and we'll be out of here.
All right.
Interpretation or of that organization is that. That's from Teresa Rock. Department of Homeland Security? Well, the State Department issues visas. Yeah. And
is this the next video?
Under the Department of Homeland Security works with them. So
just for your information on through that process.
Video
with
36.
It took us 3 years to be done. And we had to hire lawyers to get him his R1 visa. And so he's here legally, otherwise it would be an illegal, and he literally was running for his life. We rescued him out of Thailand, when he was from Pakistan, and they wanted to kill him. It's terrible. So I'm not sure I dislike that. I'm just giving you fodder here.
Now, I've heard lawyers say that, and many things supports people that get H-2B, an H-1B and an H-2B visa, because it's the legal way to do things. Right. It's not illegal immigration to get an H-1B and H-2B visa.
Question for you. I'm going to...
Again, Davalu's there patronizing the churchgoer. It's the legal way. Oh, here,
you don't want to miss this, okay?
Sorry,
we're done talking about the bloviating on, legal versus illegal. Listen to what you hear next. You want to talk about slander from Paul Van Noy and innuendo. Let's listen to this.
You might want to pull that back a little bit since I was talking over it. I don't know how careful we can be on it, but you don't want to miss this part, so we're going to replay it a little bit.
It's not illegal immigration to get an H-1B and H-2B visa.
Question for you. I'm going to cut you off. Sorry. Is Dan Wilson a white supremacist? Okay. What's his position on Israel? I'm going to tell you why I'm concerned about it. Because see some of the strongest supporters and the noisy ones that are anti-Semites. And that terrifies me. I've listened to him enough to know that I dislike him a lot. Because he is bad-mouthing constantly, and I don't like that.
Okay. Is Dan Wilson a white supremacist?
Out of nowhere. Again, remember, the conversation had nothing to do with that. Pastor Paul Van Noy completely stops it dead in its tracks, goes in this entirely different direction, and asks,
is Dan Wilson a white supremacist?
Out of nowhere.
Because, I'm really concerned some of his most vocal supporters. And again, as a candidate, you don't control who supports you. Sometimes it's like they've been talking about recently that Trump had an issue when David Duke came out and endorsed him. Just because somebody comes out and promotes and endorses you doesn't mean that the candidate aligns or adopts that worldview.
Well, not only that, it wasn't state the case. That it wasn't.
I mean,
it wasn't
just an accusation.
There's
Hey,
none.
Paul, here's one. I should say, hey, Paul, are you a child molester? Because I really hate child molesters. I mean, that is how insidious that kind of a question is. And, this brings up another point. Because Stephanie Fetzer, that rotten woman, came out of nowhere last summer, the middle of the campaign, and started asking me what my stance was on Israel. Now, mind you, in my entire life, I have never said one thing against any race or nation other than maybe when I was during the war on terror, and I had a problem with terrorists, right? But when it comes to people right here in this county, my stance has always been solid. You can't find anything stating otherwise. Equal protection for everyone. And I want to know, why is Paul Van Noy and Stephanie Fetzer and Aaron Barnard and Lucky Barnard and their entire wretched group so freaking obsessed with Israel? Hear me very clearly. I am not saying anything against the state of Israel or Jews, but I want to know why these people go out of their way to try to accuse people without any shred of evidence. It's the same damn freaking thing as coming up and declaiming somebody is a racist with no basis just so you can smear somebody and shut them down in their argument. And I want to know, why in the hell are they doing this? It is weird. It's unnatural. It's uncalled for. Why didn't he just come out and say, hey, does Dan hate black people? Does Dan hate Hispanics?
Yeah, and I'm putting this screenshot from Stephanie Fetzer up on the screen because we had never heard of this woman, had not heard of her. And this was toward the beginning of our campaign, out of the clear blue sky. What's your position on Israel and the Jewish people? Now, based on what you just heard in this leaked audio, a churchgoer of Candlelight has a meeting with their pastor, Paul Van Noy, and this Davalu Cummings, who's a political advisor, shows up. And weird, it's then the exact same social, political influencer that's on our campaign page asking this question on an unrelated video. And I will tell you what ensued after this, the Stephanie Fetzer cropped up every now and then at key points along the way, repeating these same exact talking points.
Same lies. Same innuendos.
And you want to talk about innuendo? That's an innuendo out of clear blue. What is that? What is that?
In fact,
Innuendo.
I was the only candidate. Bob Norris is on the record of going after a woman of Jewish descent. That's in the middle of a lawsuit right now.
Okay.
If we're going to play this game, you assholes, we're going to talk about this. Because this is exactly what you're doing. And I made it very clear, my belief in the United States Constitution, my belief in the Bill of Rights, my attempt to, and I was endorsed by the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association over Bob Norris, because I believe in America, in the spirit of the founding fathers and in fidelity to the Bill of Rights, all men are created equal. They are equal in worth, period. And everybody in this county and in this country is supposed to get equal protection under the law. No greater protection, no lesser protection. That was my message. And they smear me by insinuating hideous things. And this is another thing why I can't stand Dave Riley. Dave Riley, I left alone until that flaming Fed asshole took a picture that I had so many people that supported me. And there was a lady named Anat that towards the end of the campaign was on her own, decided she wanted to wave signs. And she happened to have the Star of David on one of her cloaks. And Riley came in and started insinuating with his hateful bullshit something that is completely untrue. I am not for or against anybody but American people, period. Dave, being the punk-ass little bitch that he is no different than Paul Van Noy. You're both the same exact operators, and I reject both of you.
We're still on the air. We're still live. We're going to continue in this conversation. You're going to have to maybe pick up on the clip where we left off, because I got distracted and now I don't remember which is the last one. We are nearing toward the end in this conversation.
36.
This is the never before heard audio that we had promised. We're delivering it here tonight. We've worked our way through this.
Oops. How do I bring that up? There we go.
It's just a little bit of a lag.
Yeah. So we're going to continue listening to Paul, because it gets even better as far as what I should have done to make him all warm and fuzzy.
So it's Paul Van Noy and Davalu Cummings.
With many people, and you guys know, people generally, I told you this, I told you it sounds arrogant. Almost everybody that runs for office comes and sees me personally. They make an appointment, they get into my office. This was a one-liner email. I told you, get to know me, here's how to get a hold of me. I don't pursue them. they pursue me. And when I see any of these people, doesn't matter who they are, I always tell them, campaign on what you do, not what the others don't do. Talk about you, the positive things you want to bring to our community, not the negative things you think others are doing. Dan is a mudslinger, and I dislike it a lot. And I don't want to see Bob do that, and Bob knows it. I've told him to his face, take the high road. Don't go there. Don't get into a pissing match with this guy. And to me, when I have watched Dan, even the front page of his website is a documentation of everything that he hates about Bob Norris. It is. I've seen it. Now, maybe they've changed it to his website.
Hey, Paul, once again, you're a bald-faced liar. Our website, you go back into the Wayback Machine. We showed you folks last week. It talked about why I was running, what my priorities and my platform was. It was the most robust, my history, my qualifications, my service, my expertise, my hobbies, all of that. And yes, we had tabs that talked about the issues. And by the way, if you're running for office and you're trying to contrast yourself between the opponent, unlike Dan Gookin, sorry, man, I don't agree with you. When you say negative campaigning don't work, I saw that in a tweet today as to why you won. This is the same bullshit that happens by people that are dishonest. I had nothing but solutions and a platform that I talked about. If any of you guys ever bothered to actually come and listen to me live. But no, you take one small section, which was the contrast. And by the way, my undersheriff, active law enforcement inside Bob Norris's inner circle, was feeding me the nefarious things that were going on. Concerned citizens, former employees, disgruntled employees, and others were coming on a regular basis and bringing me the receipts. And I can't just sit on that because the KCRCC can't be bothered to do anything about it. Stan Mortensen isn't paying attention to what's going on. So yeah, if you want to say it's mudslinging by bringing truth and pointing out that Bob Norris is on $187,000 a year disability retirement from Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department, and there are work restrictions, and he's claiming it's only a shoulder injury when we know from a former family member that he had a heart attack in 2003, and he's up here making another $150,000 a year as sheriff, but he's performing duties that are in violation, most likely in violation of his work restrictions. These are things that are integrity issues, and it's dishonest. And we can talk about the dishonesty with the helicopter program and the pay to play and allowing the deputies in the Deputy Sheriff's Association to use PAC money to send out a flyer using the Kootenai County Sheriff's badge to promote you as one of the candidates. I mean, these are just small snippets of the issues in human trafficking, which we know happens. In fact, we're going to listen about Paul describing one of the close friends of his that happens to work at a small agency here in Kootenai County, law enforcement, who tells him how bad Bob Norris is.
And hold on, because I'm sorry, if you are dealing with an issue of human trafficking, you don't follow that is happening in this county, and you have a sitting sheriff who denies it. You don't run a campaign and say, well, I'm just going to hold back and I'm going to run a positive campaign and I'm not going to produce the evidence of this or give this guy pushback because, I'll do my best to be positive and hope to win the office, an unwinnable scenario. And then I'll go after it. No, what you chose to do was you exposed it in real time because you knew that evil was happening. And when you have people at risk and humans being trafficked, you don't wait months. You don't wait until next year. You expose the evil, even if it's at the expense of any of you guys thinking, well, you got to do what you got to do and run a clean campaign. No. It isn't so. No. It isn't so.
Was Jesus running a clean campaign when he overturned the money changers' tables in the temple? And by the way, remember, Davalu Cummings, on her own LinkedIn page and by her own admission earlier on in these recordings, claimed that she was a human trafficking Homeland Security agent in New Mexico for 15 years. Isn't it funny how a Homeland Security human trafficking agent isn't coming out publicly and telling Bob Norris where he's wrong? Does that sit very well with you?
Yeah, think about that. You have somebody that did that, a lifelong career, or a good part of their career that did that, advocating for the current sitting sheriff, and they're going to pretend like there's any county in America that exists where human trafficking doesn't occur. But you have the sitting sheriff saying repeatedly on video, repeatedly on tape, repeatedly on podcasts, it doesn't exist because human trafficking doesn't exist in this county.
Yeah. All right.
Twice. Both times I looked at it, it was a Bob bashing website. And I don't go there. That just doesn't work for me. Not to mention, now I'm going to be a jerk because I know you're here to try to get me to pay attention to Dan Wilson. Dan Wilson has not done a thing to get my attention. He has not called, asked for an appointment, offered to take me to dinner, to lunch. He's not wined and dined me. And you know what? It sounds arrogant, but that doesn't fly with me. If you want my attention, come and talk to me. And I would like to put him on the hot seat. I'd like to put him on a stool in front of this church. We're going to ask you a bunch of questions. Answer it. And that's the way I want to approach it, not go through.
Okay, Paul.
Oh, boy. Uh-oh.
You do sound arrogant. In fact, you are arrogant. The difference between me and most politicians, I wasn't a politician. Code doesn't allow me to grovel to anybody because my belief is we don't have kings in this country. We don't have nobility. We aren't controlled by the church. We're all equal. You would never see me grovel like Bob Norris would to get a vote from you or to get your endorsement. My identity was never in being the sheriff like Bob's. The most pathetic thing I think I have ever heard in my life, coming from a man who claims to be a shepherd of a 2,000 person flock, is to think somehow that he's greater than the Apostle Paul or the other apostles. And I didn't do enough to woo him, to get his attention, to approach him the right way. I read you the email I sent it one time. He acknowledges, even last week in the pre-recording, that he received it and it offended him, so he threw it out. Do you guys understand what Paul Van Noy is saying behind closed doors compared to what he's saying? How Dan Wilson, he does this through innuendo, that I spent months trying to attack his credibility because because he wouldn't endorse me. Now I roll with real men, hard men that act like men that are followers of Christ should. Men like Jim Harbin. So yeah, I wouldn't suck you off, and apparently that pissed you off. To be blunt, but I don't know how else do you not say this other than being so crude to how crude what Paul Van Noy and Davalu Cummings, the former federal agent, were doing in this closed door session. If you're going to Candlelight right now, ask yourself, why are you following a man's advice that is acting the way that he's acting and saying the things in his own words that he's saying? He must think that he's better than all of you. What does he think about the poor person that comes into the congregation that doesn't have a lot to give to the coffers on Sunday morning?
All the potentials of what might be, or it looks funny, or it's a potential. Forgive me, I look further with another person. I would at least get the one that he did 4 years ago, because that if you read this consistently, these short answers are the bullet, the elaborated and exhaustive, same thing. One word versus a paragraph. And so in contending for Dan, if that was Senda, think that through. Can we still be friends? I would tell them I hate politics.
He does.
I hate it. I don't want to fight with anybody. I don't be divided like this. Even the Idaho rejects hate stuff and my outspoken. I have appealed to them just to think. Do you hate heroin addiction? Do you hate rape? Don't say carte blanche. Idaho rejects hate. That isn't thinking. I want us to think because our community deserves it. Amen. All right. Continue my waxing stupid. If I were Dan, and the sheriff, who is the actual sheriff right now, was giving a contender a slice of his time to say, if you have anything really, you adjust your schedule and I will meet with you. If I were Dan, I would have done it. If I had the proof, if I had the documents, if I had answers, I would rearrange my entire life because it's a campaign now. If I were Dan Wilson, I would have said, name it, time, place, I'll be there.
Okay.
Play the game.
Look, this again, Paul said that he wanted to put me on a stool in his congregation and grill me and ask me questions. Well, that would have been awesome, Paul. We did ask for an official to the Bob Norris campaign, to the KCRCC, legacy media, alternative media, social media, all over this region for 90 days, a standing offer, according to the Federal Election Committee rules, to have a one-on-one debate. Not this debate that was not a debate that Bob Norris claimed that he was throwing early on in the campaign, which was full of his campaign paraphernalia and had all of his friends, former prosecuting attorney, deputy prosecutor Bryant Bushling and Bruce Matari. I mean, it was a dog and pony show. They never would do an official, real debate.
And you will hear Paul Van Noy and Davalu Cummings actually laughing about that. Oh, he had apparel. He had apparel at the dog and pony show that Norris was calling a debate. Oh, I have no doubt that he did, and they find a good laugh about it.
Let's go to we're going to go to one more, and then here's what I'm going to propose. We're already at 2 hours. Mm-hmm. We're going to make this available, as you've said, online. You guys have already heard enough. You're going to hear what to me is probably one of the most egregious things that he says coming up very quickly here in gossip. We're going to close out. Then we're going to let you guys
Good idea.
Go ahead and download this. You've already heard it, but let's go ahead and listen to this last portion. We have 2 more that we're not going to play. They will be available for you to listen to. Take a listen to this next one.
Show me the proof. Don't make accusations. Don't make hearsay. Don't make potentials. Don't make it looks funny. Give me the actual fact. Committed a crime. What have I done? And forget me now. I'm going to pull myself completely out of Dan and Bob. I have to deal with this stuff all the time as a pastor. Not only in a 2,000-member church, but in a community where I'm the pastor, the president of the Ministerial Association, where I'm dealing with the city and when I'm dealing with the county, with all the stuff that I do. It is constant. I am always being accused of something. And I always tell them, show me the money. Bring the accusation. Not what you thought you heard, not what you heard. Tell me what you saw. Come and talk to me to my face. This is a problem of being a public figure.
He's trying to say that anything I said was just perceived and there was no truth to it. And he has to deal with it because every time he talks about something, he's a victim too. He wants everybody to know what a victim this pastor is. This is a constant theme with Paul Van Noy, is what a victim he is.
And both Dan and Bob now are public figures. And it is just so wrong. It just sits so wrong with me. For example, somebody will say, we're leaving Candlelight. And they'll say, well, did you go talk to Paul? No. Well, why are you leaving? Well, we heard it is heartbreaking to me. I literally have spent years crying with people I love that leave the church with a misunderstanding. Here's a perfect example. How long have you been around? When we bought this building, I told the sellers that we have to have a easement for the parking lot because it was skating. And they weren't selling the skating. And I said, we have to have a process of lease.
Blah, blah, blah.
And if you ever sell that property, I have to have first right of refusal. So this is all part of our deed when we purchased it. A few years later, he calls me and says, hey, we're going to close.
Still playing underneath, that's the voice of Pastor Paul Van Noy as he continues again. He sequestered that conversation. He's talking about a victim story, a time when he was subject to gossip in the church. And he was, like on the sad recipient end of that. You can keep playing. I mean,
Well, no,
because
because there's something coming up that we can't miss.
Okay.
I wish I had the ability to
I'm
needle
going to
drop
be
it.
quiet now. Keep going.
New owner, somebody could have bought this property, and I still had access to available. Now, Gold's Gym was going to buy that property, and they were going to build a gym on the parking lot. I had access to available. Now, Gold's Gym was going to buy that property, and they were going to build a, and I still had access to available. Now, Gold's Gym was
Oh my
buy
gosh,
that
this keeps going on and
and
on.
they were going to build a gym on the parking lot, right in the front. We would have lost parking, we'd have been out of it, just like that. I had to buy it. So I told them, we'll buy it. It was just not even a negotiation. This all happened over the phone. So I called our bank and I said, I need $2 million. And they said, done. Thank God, because we had credibility, we established ourselves in the community. And so they said, but you're going to have to raise 30%. So $600,000. I said, no problem. I went back. I was in Georgia when I got the phone call. This all happened over the phone. Came back, met with the elders, says, hey, we need to buy this property. What do you guys think? And they all said, yep. So I said, we got to raise $600,000. I said, okay, let's start a campaign. I went in front of the church the following Sunday, told them what was going on, told them we need to raise $600,000. Everybody was excited.
I'm pulling this down a little bit because I'm really familiar. Keep it playing. I'm familiar with this audio. He goes on and on about this story. What he's trying to say is he was subject, as a pastor in the pulpit, subject to this misinformation, and it creates, wreaked havoc in his church to where they lost a group of elders and donors to the church. Oh, and by the way, if he didn't get this deal on this property, he said they would have been out of business. I'm quoting that word for word. He would have been out of business.
Oh.
Business. Out of business.
I tell them the bank call, I'm telling the story, everybody's excited. Ooh, wait, not everybody's excited. All of a sudden there's an uprising. Paul's just manipulating us. Paul is lying because the number's changing. And legitimately, it was 100% true. And let me tell you what happened. We lost probably 40 major donor families, lost an income of over $10,000 a month. And in those days, that was a lot more than it is now. But still, $10,000 a month right now would put 3 or 4 of our staff out of work like that. We even had people meeting with the elders, interviewing with our realtor, looking up documents, every bit of documentation, and finally came and met with the elders. And after every elder, you ready, conspired to lie to cover up for me, which was no lie, said at the end of an elders meeting, I wish I had a lie detector gun so I could just testify you guys. In other words, accused every elder in unity of conspiring to lie. And they all left the church and created a bunch of noise. Heartbreak. This is what leaders deal with. And I hate it. That's why I hate mudslinging. Because then they leave the church, they're like the disgruntled employee, they got something to say. People go around doing this stuff, and it's horrible. It destroys families, it destroys life. My wife, my kids are so damaged by the ministry that one of my daughters has renounced her faith. She lives in New York. She won't even talk to me. 3 years she hasn't talked to me. The 3 kids struggle terribly with, they're believers, but they struggle with the church and people and Christians. I don't want to be around them. They don't have to. Where does he go to church? I think I know something.
Okay. So he's talking about a victim. It's hard being in ministry. His children have suffered. In fact, he has one daughter that has given up the faith and moved away, and his other kids are struggling with it. Well, doesn't that disqualify him as an elder? Because you're supposed to have, kids that are behaved and all that stuff. I mean, we want to go technically the way these guys want to continually push this narrative. Again, side note, he's a victim. Now let's listen. Finally,
keep that in mind. We're getting to the finally, but
slander.
This whole entire thing that Paul Van Noy just went off on it was very calculated to say, I'm going to take this conversation and I want to show you how I'm the victim. I'm the victim in this scenario. Cry with me, empathize with me.
Well, he did that 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
At the Wednesday night
And
service.
that, for those of you that are listening, and we know you are because this has been promoted and it's the juicy gossip going around town who attend Candlelight Church, you have to understand how you are being emotionally manipulated by a guy who stands in the pulpit. He gets you to cry with him. He gets you to laugh with him, empathize with his family, down to earth kind of guy and those experiences. But the duplicitous then behind closed doors. Here we're getting to the juicy part.
Final one, and we're wrapping it up.
Hang on.
Can I tell you what I've heard? And you can tell me if it's true. This is for our conversation. So what I've heard is that he was a evangelical Christian, and then he became a Catholic. And then as a Catholic, he had an affair with his assistant, divorced his wife. His present wife was his former assistant. Now they're married, and he got excommunicated from the Catholic Church because of it. Conversation has not left my lips ever.
Oh, sure. Let's put that
you
on
talk
close.
about what perceptions. What I've thought to myself the same thing.
Okay, that's good enough.
Okay.
So Paul claims that this has never left his lips before, but he actually alluded to it the week before in the other recording, that I was an evangelical, and then I became a Catholic, and then I had an affair with my assistant, who was you. Were you ever my assistant?
No, but I don't want to get in the weeds on that because, again, this is just on the heels of Van Noy derailing the conversation with the churchgoer and soliciting empathy and his own victimhood at the hands of lies and gossip. Mm-hmm. And then he's no sooner done telling that story, which had nothing to do with anything except to put him in the spotlight of the conversation. And he's like, can I tell you what I heard?
He's trying to relate, right? You know, I'm relatable.
I get it.
But I heard that Dan converted to Catholicism, had an affair with his partner, got divorced, and then married my assistant.
Or something. Yeah, your secretary.
Secretary. Were you ever my secretary?
But so no, never the secretary. Never practiced Catholicism. So I wouldn't. I
want to know where that even came from. These are the same. I'm guessing Stephanie Fetzer started that.
Well, and then I think that was just even a twist. That was funny. Like hey, let's throw out one that isn't the truth, but it's just some funny thing that we're going to make Dan Wilson now have to chase.
Hey, I heard that Paul Van Noy, as a street preacher, had an issue with women.
There you go.
I've never said that before, but
that's all it is.
It's never left my lips before, but I had heard that Paul Van Noy, while he was a street preacher selling hot tubs in California, had an issue with women, and I don't know if that's true or not, and I would never say that to anybody else except for all of you 1,000 that are watching right now, but
that's exactly right. And what the political operatives will do is they will align with anybody who's willing to defame you, to spread rumors that are based on partial facts. And then, as with this one, what Paul Van Noy, can I tell you what I heard, was one that was just to be funny, a twisted, some kind of twisted version of something or the other that had some. There's a nugget of something in there, knowing that you had gone through a previous divorce. Well, let's put a nugget of something in there and just throw Wilson,
previous divorce,
throw you off the mark so that you have to chase. You got to chase something.
Well,
else.
Here's a fun fact: Stephanie Fetzer, the political operative, and Dawna's about ready to produce her expose on Fetzer, and you're not going to want to miss this. But Fetzer, fun fact, sought out my ex-wife and became fast friends during the election. Forgot to say a couple things that were accuracies that maybe people want to know, which is, in the state of Washington, I became a single dad with full custody of the kids for several years while the ex had to complete court-appointed reunification therapy. And I still, until they aged out, had primary custody of the kids, or guardianship. What do you call it? I'm forgetting. It's not even custody. It's not guardianship, but they lived with me.
Yeah.
But yet this sounds just like what Stephanie in her disinformation would do by saying this vile shit. Now, ask yourselves this, folks, in conclusion. I brought peace to these people until they brought war, and now I will bring war until they bring peace. Why? Is a former Homeland Security deputy that worked for the Kootenai County Sheriff's Office, who was appointed to work under the Homeland Security arm when it federalized with the fusion centers back after 9/11, Bob Norris, who came up here in about 2013, about the same time that Bruce Matari from Virginia came up here. Nobody knows anything really about him prior to that. And then you have Davalu Cummings here, former Homeland Security, along with her husband. My question is, why are they all so close to Paul Van Noy? Is it possible, I'm just speculating, is it possible that Candlelight is the epicenter for a federal operation to where they keep tabs on everybody that is attending that church and what they are and aren't doing? Is the former federal agent truly retired, or is there any possibility that this former federal agent is now a contractor and making money working for the federal government as a federal contractor? I have no idea where any of this is, if any of it's true, but these are questions when things don't make sense. When Stephanie Fetzer comes in out of nowhere, a political operative from California, and winds up in the scene with Paul Van Noy, when you have Lucky and Aaron Barnard that are tattoo artists, where several tattoo parlors in Kootenai County, verifiable, have federal informants inside them, what is going on? When you see guys that claim that they are speaking, I'm a prophet, I am a spokesman for God, Paul Van Noy's own words, when they say these things and then behind closed doors, they work in smear campaigns, they are potentates in royalty that you have to approach us with just the right credentials. You know, you of a lesser sit over here while you of greater nobility sit over here. None of this makes sense. As a follower of Christ my entire life, just never left the faith, never converted to Catholicism. That's not my thing. If you're Catholic, good on you. No judgment. I'm just saying I've been a follower of Christ for my entirety. I'm calling out Paul Van Noy as not being a prophet of God. He's a false prophet. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. I want to read something from C.S. Lewis. Two things that Lewis says. One of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is to shut their eyes to facts. As we have been talking about this tonight and last week, in the past 18 months, many of you are refusing to see what we've been putting down. You're refusing and shutting your eyes to facts because these people are your friends. They make you feel good. They're in your church community. They're who you socialize with at political rallies and stuffing parties. And finally, Lewis says, when we Christians behave badly or fail to behave well, we are making Christianity unbelievable to the outside world. Tell me how it is that Paul Van Noy and Davalu said all the rhetoric they did when Paul said that he's against the love first movement or whatever it is that downtown Coeur d'Alene was supporting. And Dan Gookin, I believe, was part of that. But all of a sudden, now that's changed. And Stephanie and Paul and Dan are all best friends. And the KCRCC now is at odds because Dave Riley and Brent Reagan and Mary White and all those others are now against them. Who is shutting their eyes and failing to see what is going on? I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, I was trying to bring up that CS. I'm gonna put that here just so people can reread that one more time. One of the most cowardly things ordinary people do is to shut their eyes to the facts. And C.S. Lewis quote. And then when we Christians behave badly or fail to behave well, we are making Christianity unbelievable to the outside world.
Hey, Paul, how are you doing showing your Christianity to the outside world with your behavior?
Not only that, I mean, it's timely to the conversation because Paul Van Noy, Davalu Cummings, and Stephanie Fetzer are so tied in. And this is a person, Yeah, I have been researching for quite some time, and will have an extensive story to tell you about Mrs. Stephanie Fetzer, where she has come from and what she's up to here in Kootenai County. But this is one of the things, and I want to get Dan's response to this. We'll sign off for tonight. But on the heels of that quote from C.S. Lewis, these are people, and Stephanie Fetzer in particular, who is constantly going on quoting scripture, appealing to your emotion, knowing how to tell stories. She's been taught how to partake in multi-level marketing organizations. Not saying there's anything wrong with that, with those of you who do, but is poofy organic. She's been taught as a political operative, do MLM businesses, get involved in religion and churches. These are your spheres of influence. These are places that you can go that have ready-made people. This is the type of thing, a Christian woman quoting scripture. And then again, I'll turn it. It's her friend Shauna Lambert today was defending Fetzer in the comments section because Fetzer's remained quiet, going back and forth with scripture. I don't even do it anymore because it falls flat. They've ruined it. And Fetzer drops this. She drops this on our campaign page to in an attempt to destroy you. Go stick to your own business. If you want Bob Norris elected, go wave signs for Bob Norris. Don't come on Dan Wilson's page and ask him why he dropped out of the guardianship battle for his daughter.
Spreading lies. A disabled daughter, I might add.
This is disgusting filth. And then you want to sit on your page and quote scripture and feign innocence when this is what you're doing subversively. And it's disgusting to get in the middle of this because you have no idea of that battle and you've heard one side of lies, and then you want to pretend in conversations with other people. Well, have you gone and talked to so-and-so? Because I have. You've never spoken to Dan Wilson. You don't know the story.
In fact, Davalu, let's go back. Not only did Stephanie lie when she said she met me, we never met. I would have remembered that horse face. Sorry. That's the way I feel about her. She never came, despite the fact that she ran her mouth about me, and so did Davalu. Right after Davalu was talking all this smack to this former parishioner of Candlelight that we were just listening to that conversation, Davalu and David Cummings, a former federal helicopter pilot, came by our booth at the county fair, which was right next to the Kootenai Republican Central Committee. And as soon as they saw us, you could see Davalu move as far away as she could to come the back way instead of coming the shortest way to the Republican booth. These people wanted to talk to me one-on-one. And again, this doesn't break my heart. This is not about, well, these guys weren't nice to me. It is exposing the horse shit.
It's for the best. Thank you.
It's exposing the horse shit. And many of you out there don't understand what's going on because you see that stupid Republican rated and vetted card and you think the Republicans are the bee's knees, and you just go down the list and you believe everything that Bjorn Handeen says, since you're watching Bjorn, and I don't know if you still are, and Brent Reagan, and you just blindly follow them instead of using your God-given senses to do what's right. And you're losing the republic underneath you because you've all become arrogant. You become antithetical to the Bill of Rights and the Constitution by trying to force your beliefs down people instead of leading people by example and living out your faith. Instead, you're these political operative hacks, and I've had enough with it. And I have just begun this fight. I will not stop until justice is served. And if you don't agree with me, stay long enough, see what we bring to the table, put a little elbow grease into it, and then tell me where we're wrong.
You guys messed up. You thought you were real smart in an operation, a smear campaign, as you call it, operation against Dan Wilson. You messed up. You actually built something with more power than ever would have happened through success in that local campaign. It's unfortunate for you. It is, and there's more to come. As much as you heard tonight, there's more people that are in that inner circle with Paul Van Noy, Stephanie Fetzer being one of them, and people are tied to her. And for those of you, others that she has recruited, she's such a nice lady. Yeah, she has that side. She knows how to do it. She's a nice lady. She's a nice lady. Thank you for joining us tonight on the Liberty Without Compromise live stream broadcast. Make sure to visit our website to watch past episodes and view exclusive reports like ones we've already released. Matt Irving's hoping to be back in the pulpit on Sunday.
Weird how he
Good old
had a
Matt
hiatus
Irving.
for a couple weeks after you exposed him and
Hiatus for about a month.
shut down the various Facebook pages so nobody could comment.
Matt Irving, what's the name of his church? I'm going to get it wrong. Oh, boy.
North Star Baptist?
North Star Baptist Church. Matt Irving.
Oh, by the way, he's part of the Paul Van Noy's Ministerial Association. I wonder if the reason why I had so much static from a lot of the pastors during the campaign is because Paul was telling all the pastors as president of the Ministerial Association who they shouldn't support.
It's not benign. It's not benign. The problem is, and the reason it's confusing, is you have good mixed with the bad. They're doing a lot of good. Look over here, doing good. Ministerial Association guides people on, I'm going to tell you how to get it. Paul Van Noy says to Matt Irving, look, you're new here. I'm going to tell you how to get ahead in this town and grow that church. Grow that religion business, buddy.
Religion business all.
There's a reason they put Matt Irving up front at the Charlie Kirk Candlelight thingy that they did downtown. Anyway, go to our website, libertywithoutcompromise.com. You can go back and watch how we expose Matt Irving. He's out of the pulpit for a month anyway. I don't think it was a medical issue, but that's what they say. And then check the website tomorrow where we'll have transcripts, full audio transcripts, both sides of that conversation over on our website at libertywithoutcompromise.com. That's it. I think I don't even know. This is like the longest day in my entire life.
Drinks and cigars. Remember to pray for Jim Harbin, true patriot, true man of God. We need more men like Jim. Now be strong and courageous. Do the right thing. God bless you.